The human heart seeks a baseline of quiet, a steady rhythm of predictable moments that tell us we are home. We build our lives on the soft architecture of routine. The morning coffee, the sound of a child's laughter in the hallway, the reliable presence of a friend who always knows exactly what to say. But sometimes, that rhythm is interrupted by a silence so profound that it reshapes the landscape of a community forever. Tonight, we find ourselves in the rolling, verdant hills of Middle Tennessee, specifically in Warren County, where the transition from winter to spring is usually marked by the gentle budding of dogwoods and the smell of damp earth after a cooling rain. In this part of the world, the geography is defined by its peace. The hills rise and fall like a slow breath, and the small towns that nestle within them operate on a foundation of mutual recognition and neighborly care. It is a place where a Sunday morning usually carries the scent of pine and the distant chime of church bells, a place where the stillness is a comfort rather than a cause for concern. Within this landscape lived Randi Jean Shelton, a woman whose existence was woven deeply into the fabric of her community. To understand the loss felt in Warren County, one must first understand the light that Randi carried. She was not merely a resident or a name on a census roll. She was a woman of consistent, unassuming kindness. Those who knew her through her work at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design describe her as much more than an employee. She was a fixture of their daily lives, a woman who had been a family friend for many years and was the best friend of the business owner's daughter-in-law. Her presence in the office was a mundane anchor, a reliable source of sweetness in a world that can often be abrasive. There is a specific kind of grief that follows the loss of someone who was known for their gentleness. It is a quiet, heavy weight that settles over the desks and the break rooms, where the absence of a smile becomes a physical presence. Randi's kindness wasn't just reserved for those she saw every day at the office. She was the kind of person who built connections through the smallest interactions. Many in the community remember her through her side business selling magnetic lashes. It seems like a small detail, a minor footnote in a life. But it was in these transactions, the tips shared, the quick messages exchanged, the brief conversations on a porch or at a storefront, that her reputation was solidified. A friend once noted that every single interaction with Randi was filled with a genuine sweetheart nature. She had a way of making the person in front of her feel seen and valued, turning a simple business exchange into a moment of human connection. She was a staple of the community, the kind of person who made the small-town atmosphere of Warren County feel like a sanctuary. But the center of Randi's world, the gravity that held her life in orbit, was her 8-year-old daughter, Thea. At 8 years old, life should be a collection of simple wonders. The height of the summer grass, the excitement of a second-grade classroom, and the unwavering security of a mother's love. Thea was described by those who knew her as a sweet soul, a mirror of the kindness her mother practiced every day. In the eyes of the community, the two were inseparable in spirit, a duo of gentle energy that brightened the corners of Warren County. To think of one was to think of the other. Thea was a child of the Tennessee hills, growing up in a place where the air is thick with the history of families who stay for generations. She was a daughter, a student, and a friend. Her life just beginning to unfurl like the spring leaves on the trees outside her window. The transition from life to memory often happens in the spaces between the notes of a normal day. For the Sheltons, that transition began on a weekend in early March, a time when the world was supposed to be waking up from its winter slumber. Sunday, March 8th, started like any other day in Middle Tennessee, but as the hours stretched on, a silence began to emanate from the Shelton residence, a silence that eventually prompted a call for a welfare check. When the officers from the Warren County Sheriff's Office arrived, the peace of the neighborhood was shattered by the clinical necessity of an investigation. They entered the home with heavy steps, moving through rooms that still held the remnants of a life in progress. Perhaps a coffee mug left on a counter, or a school backpack ready for Monday morning. What they found was a tragedy that defies the quiet nature of the hills. Randi and Thea had been taken from the world, victims of a domestic-related incident carried out by Thea's father, Joseph Nicholas Shelton, Jr., before he took his own life. The investigation that followed was a search for facts in a house filled with unanswered questions. Sheriff Jackie D. Matheny, Jr. later spoke to the community, not just as a law enforcement official, but as a witness to a collective wound. He acknowledged the multiple families impacted by this loss, specifically mentioning the children in the community who would forever carry the weight of this tragedy. In a small town, a loss like this is not contained within four walls. It ripples outward, touching the schools where Thea sat in class and the office where Randi shared her days. The Warren County Apparel family felt the blow with particular sharpness. In their public tributes, they didn't speak of Randi as a worker, but as a soul who was forever in our hearts. They remembered Thea not just as a child, but as a light that had been extinguished far too soon. As the legal and procedural gears of the investigation turned, the community was left to navigate the why. In domestic tragedies, the motive is often a locked door, a mystery that remains even after the how has been documented by forensic teams. The sheriff's office labeled the event a domestic-related incident, a clinical term for a deeply personal and shattering betrayal of the safety a home is supposed to provide. Yet, even in the face of such darkness, the community chose to focus on the restoration of peace. They chose to speak the names of Randi and Thea with the same kindness the two had shown the world. They gathered their memories like precious stones, ensuring that the legacy of these two sweet souls would not be defined by their final moments, but by the years of light they provided to everyone around them. There is a finality to the turning of the seasons in Tennessee. The rain that hits the tin roofs in March eventually gives way to the heat of June, and the silence of a house becomes a part of the landscape. But the names Randi and Thea remain. They are whispered in the stories told by friends. They are honored in the workplace where Randi's desk once stood, and they are held in the quiet prayers of a town that refuses to forget. We look toward the resources available for those in need. The National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 as a beacon for others, a way to ensure that the morning always comes. Tonight, as the Tennessee rain continues to fall, We let the memory of Randi and Thea be a reminder of the sweetness that exists in the world, and we find comfort in the fact that they are now at peace, held forever in the heart of a community that loved them. The rolling hills of Warren County, Tennessee, possess a peculiar kind of stillness in the early days of March. It is a time of suspension, where the skeletal branches of the oaks and maples wait for the first true warmth of the sun, and the air carries a crisp, lingering memory of winter. In these valleys, life moves at a pace that respects the land. People here know the sound of their neighbors' trucks on the gravel roads. They know whose garden is the first to bloom and whose porch light stays on late into the evening. It was within this intimate geography that Randi Jean Shelton lived her 35 years, carving out a life defined by the steady, quiet work of being a good neighbor and a devoted mother. Randi was a woman of Middle Tennessee through and through, grounded, resilient, and possessed of a kindness that didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. To walk into the offices of Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design during the years Randi worked there was to encounter a woman who was the heartbeat of the operation. In small-town businesses, the lines between professional and personal don't just blur, they vanish entirely. Randi wasn't just an employee who managed accounts or handled graphic design logistics. She was the daughter-in-law's best friend, a woman who had grown up alongside the family that owned the company. Her presence there was a comfort. She was the person who knew how you took your coffee, the one who remembered your children's birthdays, and the one whose laughter provided the soundtrack to a busy Tuesday afternoon. When her co-workers spoke of her later, they didn't talk about her productivity. They talked about her soul. They used words like sweetheart and light, terms that are often reserved for those who make the mundane world feel a little softer just by being in it. Randi's life was an exercise in small, beautiful connections. Beyond her primary job, she was known throughout the county for her side venture selling magnetic lashes. To some, this might seem like a trivial detail, but in the social fabric of Tennessee, these small business interactions are how reputations are built. Every delivery she made, every conversation she had with the customer, was an opportunity for her natural kindness to shine. She wasn't just selling a product, she was engaging with her community. Friends would later recall how every single interaction with her was filled with a genuine warmth. She had a way of making the most casual conversation feel significant, leaving people with the impression that they had just spent time with someone truly special. This was the Randi Jean Shelton the world knew, a woman of grace, a staple of her community, and a friend to many. But if Randi was the light of her community, her 8-year-old daughter, Thea, was the center of her universe. Thea was a vibrant thread in the tapestry of Warren County, a child who inherited her mother's sweet soul. At 8 years old, Thea's world was one of school days, family gatherings, and the innocent exploration of the world around her. She was at that precious age where the world is still large and full of wonder, where the most important thing is the companionship of a parent and the safety of home. Those who saw her with Randi described a bond that was palpable, a mother and daughter who moved through life with a shared gentleness. Thea was a student in the local school system, a friend to her classmates, and a beloved figure to the extended family at Warren County Apparel. She represented the future of the county, a bright spark whose potential was as vast as the Tennessee sky. The tragedy that claimed these two lives began to unfold over a weekend that should have been like any other. Sunday, March 8th, arrived with the usual quiet of a small-town Sabbath. But as the day progressed, the rhythm of the Shelton household fell silent. It was this silence, the absence of the expected movements and communications, that eventually led to the call for a welfare check. For the officers of the Warren County Sheriff's Office, these calls are a routine part of the job, yet they are always approached with a certain underlying tension. When they arrived at the residence, the stillness they encountered was heavy. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just mean no one is talking. It means something has fundamentally changed. Upon entering the home, the officers discovered the devastating reality. Randi and Thea had been killed. The investigation quickly determined that the perpetrator was Thea's father, Joseph Nicholas Shelton, Jr. He had taken the lives of his wife and daughter before turning the weapon on himself. In the clinical language of law enforcement, it was a domestic-related incident, a phrase that serves as a sterile container for an unthinkable act of violence. For the community of Warren County, however, no clinical term could encapsulate the shock. The idea that the very person who should have been a protector was the source of the tragedy was a bitter pill to swallow. Joseph was found at the scene, leaving behind a wake of destruction that touched every corner of the county. There was no immediate motive found, no clear explanation for why a life of such apparent normalcy had ended in such a harrowing fashion. Sheriff Jackie D. Metheny, Jr. took to the public to address the loss, his words reflecting the somber mood of the region. He spoke of the heartbreaking situation and the weight of this loss that would be carried by the community for years to come. He was particularly mindful of the children, Thea's classmates and friends, who were now forced to confront a reality far beyond their years. In Warren County, everyone felt the blow. The staff at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design were left to process the loss of a woman who was much more than a coworker. They shared their grief online, posting tributes that spoke of Randi and Thea as sweet souls who would be forever in our hearts. The workplace, once filled with the hum of printers and the sound of Randi's voice, became a place of mourning, a testament to the deep roots she had planted there. In the aftermath, the community did what small towns do best. They leaned on one another. They shared stories of Randi's kindness and Thea's bright smile, choosing to flood the darkness with the light of their memories. They spoke of Randi's magnetic lashes business not as a job, but as a way she had touched their lives. They remembered the way she and Thea were always together, a duo of sweetness that seemed untouchable. The investigation into the why continued, but for those who loved them, the why mattered less than the who. They focused on honoring the lives that were lived, ensuring that the names Randi and Thea remained synonymous with the love and gentleness they had offered so freely. As we look back on that March weekend in Warren County, we are reminded of the fragility of the peace we often take for granted. We are reminded, too, of the importance of reaching out. the National Domestic Violence Hotline stands as a vital resource. 1-800-799-7233, available 24/7 for anyone who feels the darkness encroaching. In the memory of Randi and Thea, the community of Warren County finds a renewed commitment to one another, a promise to look out for their neighbors and to cherish the sweet souls among them. Tonight, as the wind moves through the Tennessee valleys and the rain falls gently on the hills, we hold Randi and Thea in our thoughts, knowing that their light, though gone from our sight, continues to warm the hearts of those they left behind. The concept of a safe container is something we often associate with our homes, our families, and the small towns where we feel most at ease. Warren County, Tennessee, has long been such a container for its residents. It is a place of rolling hills and quiet mornings, where the transition from winter to spring is a slow, methodical process of renewal. But in March of 2020, that sense of safety was profoundly shaken. To understand the depth of the tragedy that befell Randi Jean Shelton and her daughter Thea, one must first understand the community they were a part of. Middle Tennessee is a region where history is measured in generations, and where the silence of a Sunday morning is usually a source of deep comfort. It is a place where neighbors look out for one another, and where the rhythms of life are steady and predictable. Randi Jean Shelton was a central figure in this world. At 35, she was a woman who had built a life on the foundation of kindness and consistent presence. Her work at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design was more than just a career. It was an extension of her social life. She had been a family friend of the owners for many years, and her best friend was their daughter-in-law. In a small business like that, you aren't just an employee, you are part of the family. Randi was known for her sweetheart nature, a term used repeatedly by those who knew her. Whether she was managing graphic design projects or chatting with colleagues, she brought a sense of softness and warmth to the environment. Her presence was a mundane anchor, a reliable, comforting constant in the lives of those around her. Her kindness extended into her personal business ventures as well. Randi was well known in the community for selling magnetic lashes, a small side business that allowed her to interact with even more people across the county. These interactions, though often brief, left a lasting impression. A friend would later write that every conversation they ever had with Randi was filled with kindness. It wasn't a performance. It was simply who she was. She had a way of making people feel seen, turning a simple delivery or a quick text into a moment of genuine human connection. This reputation for sweetness was not just a personality trait. It was a legacy she was building, one small interaction at a time. At the heart of Randi's life was her daughter, Thea. Just 8 years old, Thea was the center of her mother's world, a child who was frequently described as a sweet soul by those who knew her. In the small-town atmosphere of Warren County, childhood is often defined by the simple pleasures of the landscape, playing in the grass, the excitement of school days, and the security of a tight-knit community. Thea was a student who was loved by her teachers and classmates, a bright young girl who embodied the innocence and potential of her age. To see Randi and Thea together was to see a bond built on mutual gentleness. They were a pair who seemed to carry a quiet light with them wherever they went, a duo that the community of Warren County felt privileged to know. The silence that eventually led to the discovery of their deaths began on a weekend in early March. Sunday, March 8th, was a day that should have been filled with the usual activities of a family. Rest, preparation for the week ahead, the quiet enjoyment of each other's company. Instead, it became the date that the rhythm of the town changed. When friends and family realized they hadn't heard from the Sheltons, a call for a welfare check was placed. The Warren County Sheriff's Office responded to the residents, a task that is often part of the routine, but always carries a weight of uncertainty. As the officers approached the home, the stillness of the afternoon took on a different quality. It was no longer the peaceful silence of a Sunday in the South. It was the heavy, expectant silence of a life that has been abruptly halted. Upon entering the residence, the officers were met with the clinical reality of a tragedy. They found the bodies of Randi Jean Shelton and young Thea, both of whom had been fatally shot. Also found in the home was the body of Joseph Nicholas Shelton, Jr., Thea's father, and Randi's husband. The initial investigation determined that Joseph had killed both Randi and Thea before taking his own life. It was a domestic-related incident, a term that describes a profound betrayal of the safety and love that a home is meant to provide. For the officers who moved through the house, the scene was one of immense sorrow. They saw the mundane objects of a life interrupted, the backpack ready for school, the personal items that spoke of a family's daily existence, all of which now served as reminders of the suddenness of the loss. The news of the murder-suicide sent a shockwave through Warren County. Sheriff Jackie D. Metheny, Jr. issued a statement that reflected the collective grief of the community. He spoke of the multiple families impacted by the loss and the weight that would be carried by the children who knew Thea. In a small town, a tragedy like this isn't something you read about in the news. It's something you feel in the grocery store, in the pews of your church, and in the quiet of your own home. The loss was particularly acute at Warren County Apparel, where Randi and Thea were mourned as sweet souls who were greatly loved. The tribute they posted online was a testament to the fact that Randi was much more than an employee. She was a friend, a confidant, and a source of light for everyone who worked alongside her. In the days that followed, the community began the long process of mourning and reflection. They focused on the memories of Randi's kindness and Thea's bright spirit, refusing to let the darkness of their final moments overshadow the beauty of their lives. They shared stories of Randi's magnetic lashes business and the sweet conversations they had with her. They remembered Thea as a child who brought joy to everyone she met. The why of the incident remained elusive, as it often does in domestic tragedies, but the who was clear. Randi and Thea were two gentle souls who had been taken far too soon. The community turned to its resources, reminding everyone of the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, a 24/7 lifeline for those who might be facing their own darkness. As the seasons in Tennessee continued to turn, the memory of Randi and Thea remained a constant in Warren County. The hills continued to bloom, and the quiet of the mornings returned. But the names of those two sweet souls were spoken with a reverence that only comes from a deep and shared loss. We reflect on their lives not with a sense of urgency, but with a quiet respect for the light they brought into the world. Tonight, as the Tennessee rain falls on the tin roofs of the county, we find peace in the memory of Randi and Thea, knowing that they are remembered for the sweetness they gave to the world, and that their spirits continue to dwell in the hearts of those who loved them. The transition from winter to spring in Middle Tennessee is a period of quiet anticipation. The air begins to lose its sharp, cold edge, and the first hints of green appear on the rolling hills of Warren County. It is a landscape that encourages reflection, a place where the pace of life allows for a deep connection to one's surroundings and neighbors. In this environment, the concept of home is synonymous with safety, a sanctuary from the outside world. But for Randi Jean Shelton and her 8-year-old daughter, Thea, that sanctuary was irrevocably broken on a weekend in March. Their story is one of profound loss, but it is also a story of a community's refusal to let their light be extinguished. To honor them is to speak their names with the same kindness they practiced throughout their lives. Randi Jean Shelton was a woman whose presence was felt in the small, everyday moments of her community. At 35, she was a daughter-in-law's best friend and a constant figure at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design. In a workplace that functioned like a family, Randi was the connective tissue. Her co-workers didn't just see her as someone who did a job. They saw her as a sweetheart, a woman whose interactions were always filled with warmth. This wasn't a superficial politeness. It was a deeply ingrained part of her character. Whether she was working on a design project or chatting about her side business selling magnetic lashes, Randi had a way of making every person she met feel valued. She was a mundane anchor, a reliable source of sweetness in a world that can often feel indifferent. Her daughter, Thea, was the bright center of Randi's life. At 8 years old, Thea was a sweet soul in her own right, a child who embodied the innocence and potential of a life just beginning to unfold. In Warren County, an 8-year-old's life is filled with the rhythms of school, the joy of playing in the Tennessee hills, and the security of a mother's unwavering love. Thea was a student who was loved by her peers and a child who was cherished by the extended family at her mother's workplace. To see Randi and Thea together was to see a reflection of the best parts of the community. Gentleness, love, and a quiet, steady joy. They were a duo whose presence made the world feel a little softer, a little kinder. The silence that preceded the tragedy began on Sunday, March 8th. In the quiet of a Tennessee weekend, the absence of communication from the Shelton home eventually became a cause for concern. A call for a welfare check was placed, and the Warren County Sheriff's Office responded to the residents. For the officers, a welfare check is a task of profound responsibility, an entry into the private world of a family to ensure their safety. As they arrived at the home, the stillness of the day was heavy with an unspoken tension. Upon entering, they found a scene of unthinkable loss. Randi and Thea had been fatally shot. The investigation would later determine that the child's father, Joseph Nicholas Shelton, Jr., had killed both his wife and daughter before taking his own life. The clinical description of a domestic-related incident does little to convey the shattering reality of such an event. It was a betrayal of the ultimate safe container, the home. For the community of Warren County, the news was a heavy blow. Sheriff Jackie D. Matheny Jr. addressed the public, acknowledging the multiple families impacted and the long-term weight this loss would place on the children of the community. In a small town, everyone is connected, and a tragedy of this scale ripples outward, touching every school, every workplace, and every home. The team at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design was particularly devastated. They shared their grief in public tributes, remembering Randi and Thea not as victims, but as sweet souls who would be forever in our hearts. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the community of Warren County focused on the preservation of memory. They chose to celebrate the lives of Randi and Thea, sharing stories of Randi's kindness and the joy that Thea brought to those around her. They remembered the small details, the magnetic lashes business, the everyday conversations, the way the two of them moved through the world with a gentle energy. The investigation into the motive was ongoing, but for those who knew them, the focus was on the legacy of the lives they lived. They found strength in their collective mourning, leaning on one another to navigate the difficult days following the loss. They also pointed toward the resources available for others, highlighting the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, as a vital tool for preventing future tragedies. As the days turned into weeks and the spring fully arrived in Middle Tennessee, the hills of Warren County continued to bloom. The dogwoods and maples took on their seasonal colors, and the quiet of the mornings returned to the valleys. But the names of Randi and Thea remained a part of the local conversation, spoken with a softness and a deep respect. Their lives were a testament to the power of kindness, and their memory serves as a reminder of the sweetness that exists in even the smallest interactions. We honor them tonight by remembering their light, by acknowledging the peace they brought to their community, and by holding their names in our hearts as we look toward a future where such tragedies are no more. The investigation into the final moments of that weekend in March was a search for facts. But for the community, the search was for the heart. They found that heart in the shared stories and the collective grief that followed the loss of Randi and Thea. They found it in the refusal to let the darkness of a single weekend define the years of light these two sweet souls provided. Tonight, as the Tennessee rain falls and the world settles into a quiet stillness, we find peace in the memory of Randi and Thea. We know that they are at rest, held in the love of a community that will never forget them. Let the sound of the rain carry you into a peaceful sleep, knowing that the names of Randi and Thea are spoken with the kindness they gave to the world, and that you are safe in the quiet of the night. The landscape of Warren County, Tennessee, is one of deep, enduring peace. The rolling hills of Middle Tennessee provide a backdrop of stability and beauty, a place where the seasons change with a predictable, gentle grace. In early March, the transition from winter to spring is a time of renewal, as the world begins to wake up and the air carries the scent of fresh possibilities. But in March of 2020, that peace was interrupted by a tragedy that would forever change the fabric of the community. The loss of Randi Jean Shelton and her 8-year-old daughter Thea was an event that defied the quiet nature of the hills. It was a loss that was felt in every home and every heart, a reminder of the fragility of the safety we hold dear. Randi Jean Shelton was a woman who embodied the best of Warren County. At 35, she was a daughter-in-law's best friend and a cornerstone of the team at Warren County Apparel and Graphic Design. In a community where everyone knows their neighbor, Randi was a woman of consistent, unassuming kindness. Her co-workers described her as a sweetheart, someone whose every interaction was filled with a genuine warmth. This wasn't just a professional demeanor, it was a way of being. Whether she was working on a design project or engaging in her side business selling magnetic lashes, Randi had a way of making people feel seen and valued. She was a light that made the world feel a little softer for everyone around her, a mundane anchor who provided a steady sense of comfort and kindness. Her daughter, Thea, was the bright center of Randi's world. At 8 years old, Thea was a sweet soul who reflected the gentleness and love of her mother. In the small-town atmosphere of Warren County, an 8-year-old's life should be defined only by the simple wonders of childhood, the excitement of school, the beauty of the Tennessee hills, and the security of a family's love. Thea was a student who was cherished by her classmates and teachers, a child whose potential was as vast as the landscape around her. To those who knew her, she was a source of joy and a reminder of the innocence that defines the best parts of our lives. Together, Randi and Thea were a duo of gentle energy, a pair whose light was a constant in the lives of their friends and family. The tragedy that claimed these two lives began on a weekend in March. Sunday, March 8th, started like any other day in Warren County. But as the hours passed, a silence began to emanate from the Shelton residence. This silence, so contrary to the usual rhythms of a family's life, eventually prompted a call for a welfare check. When the officers from the Warren County Sheriff's Office arrived, they entered a home that still held the remnants of a life in progress. What they found was a heartbreaking reality. Randi and Thea had been killed in a domestic-related incident. The child's father, Joseph Nicholas Shelton, Jr., had taken the lives of his wife and daughter before turning the gun on himself. It was a tragedy that shook the very foundations of the community's sense of safety and peace. Sheriff Jackie D. Matheny, Jr. addressed the community in the aftermath, his words reflecting the deep and collective grief felt across the county. He spoke of the heartbreaking situation and the weight of this loss that would be carried by the community for years to come. In a small town, a loss like this is like a stone dropped in a still pond. The ripples reach the farthest shores, touching the schools where Thea sat in class and the office where Randi shared her days. The team at Warren County Apparel was particularly impacted, mourning Randi and Thea as sweet souls who were greatly loved. Their public tributes were a testament to the fact that Randi was much more than an employee. She was a friend, a family member, and a source of light that would be deeply missed. In the days and weeks that followed, the community focused on the preservation of memory. They chose to celebrate the lives of Randi and Thea, sharing stories of Randi's kindness and the joy that Thea brought to those around her. They remembered the small details of Randi's magnetic lashes business and the everyday conversations that built her reputation for sweetness. They refused to let the darkness of a single weekend define the legacy of these two gentle souls. Instead, they focused on the light they had provided, ensuring that their names would always be spoken with love and respect. The community also highlighted the resources available for those who might be facing their own struggles, pointing to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, as a vital lifeline. As the seasons in Tennessee continued to turn, the memory of Randi and Thea remained a part of the landscape of Warren County. The hills continued to bloom, and the quiet of the mornings returned, but the loss was not forgotten. It was transformed into a shared commitment to kindness and to looking out for one another. The investigation into the why of the incident may have reached its clinical conclusions, but the community's search for peace was found in the way they honored Randi and Thea. Tonight, as the Tennessee rain falls gently on the hills, we hold these two sweet souls in our thoughts. We find comfort in the memory of the light they brought to the world, and in the fact that they are now at peace, forever cherished by the community that loved them so dearly. The names Randi and Thea will be remembered for the sweetness they brought to this world. They were much more than victims of a tragedy. They were the fabric of a community's daily life, a mother and daughter whose gentle spirits touched everyone they met. As we look toward the future, we carry their memory with us, a reminder of the power of kindness and the importance of the safe containers we build for one another. Tonight, let the sound of the rain carry you into a restful sleep, knowing that the light of Randi and Thea continues to shine in the hearts of those who remember them. Sleep now, knowing they are at peace and that you are safe in the quiet of the night. Let the rain carry you. Good night. The silent, heavy atmosphere of a courtroom or a police station is often where the final chapters of such stories are written. But for the people of Warren County, the story of Randi and Thea is written in much softer places. It is written in the graphic design office where Randi's absence is still felt every morning when the printers start to hum. It is written in the elementary school hallways where Thea's laughter once echoed alongside her friends. These are the places where their memories are most alive and where the community continues to find the strength to move forward. The restoration of peace is a slow process, much like the changing of the seasons in the Tennessee hills. But it is a process that is built on the foundation of love and memory. Every interaction Randi had, no matter how small, was a testament to the person she chose to be every single day. She was a woman who understood that kindness is not a grand gesture, but a consistent practice. Whether she was helping a friend with their magnetic lashes or collaborating on a new apparel design, she brought a sense of sweetness and light to the task. This is the legacy that her community chooses to honor, a legacy of gentleness and human connection. Thea, too, in her 8 short years, left an indelible mark on those who knew her. She was a sweet soul whose presence was a gift to her mother and to the entire county. Together, they represented the best of what a family can be, a source of love, support, and light in a world that often needs it. As we conclude our reflection on the lives of Randi and Thea, we are reminded of the importance of community and the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of unthinkable loss, the people of Warren County chose to lean on one another, to share their grief, and to celebrate the light. They refused to let the darkness win, choosing instead to focus on the beauty of the lives that were lived. The investigation is a search for facts, but memory is a search for the heart. And the heart of Warren County remains filled with the love they had for Randi and Thea. Tonight, as the wind moves through the valleys and the rain continues to fall, we find peace in that love, and in the knowledge that these two sweet souls will never be forgotten. The tragedy of March 8th is a part of the history of Warren County, but it does not define its future. The community continues to grow, to bloom, and to look out for one another, carrying the memory of Randi and Thea as a guide. They remind us that even in the darkest of nights, there are voices waiting to help you find the morning. They remind us of the power of a sweet soul and the importance of the mundane anchors that keep us grounded. Tonight, we let the memory of Randi and Thea be our anchor, a source of peace and light as we settle into the quiet of the night. Sleep now, knowing that their spirits are at rest, and that the world is a better place for the time they spent in it. The sound of the rain on a tin roof in Tennessee is a timeless melody, a reminder of the enduring nature of the landscape and the families who call it home. It is a sound that has accompanied generations of Warren County residents through their joys and their sorrows. Tonight, let that sound be a comfort to you, a gentle backdrop to the memories of Randi and Thea. They were two sweet souls who were greatly loved, and they will be forever in our hearts. As the light of the day fades and the world grows still, we find resolution in the fact that their names are spoken with kindness, and that their memory is a source of peace. Let the rain carry you into the morning. Good night. The quiet request for a welfare check on that Sunday in March was a turning point for the community, a moment when the silence became a message. But today, the silence of Warren County is once again a comfort. It is the silence of a town that has mourned its own and found a way to carry their light forward. The names Randi and Thea are not just names in a police report. They are names that mean something to the people who knew them, friends, family, and neighbors. They are names that represent a legacy of sweetness and a commitment to kindness. We honor that legacy tonight, finding peace in the memory of the lives they lived and the love they shared. The investigation into the final moments of that weekend is a reminder of the clinical necessity of the law, but the community's response is a reminder of the power of the heart. They chose to focus on the human side of the tragedy, on the sweet souls of Randi and Thea. They chose to support one another, to reach out to those in need, and to ensure that the memory of these two gentle people would remain a positive force in the county. Tonight, as we reflect on their story, we find a sense of resolution and safety. The tragedy is in the past, and the names of Randi and Thea have been returned to the love of their families and friends. We find peace in that restoration and in the knowledge that they are at rest. As you drift off to sleep tonight, let the memory of the Tennessee hills and the quiet of Warren County be a sanctuary for you. Let the story of Randi and Thea be a reminder of the light that exists in the world and of the importance of the small acts of kindness that build a community. They were much more than their final moments. They were a lifetime of sweetness and love. We honor them by holding that light in our own hearts and by looking toward a future where every home is a safe container. Sleep now, knowing that the names Randi and Thea are remembered with the kindness they gave to the world. Let the rain carry you. Good night. The final stillness of the Shelton home on that March day was a tragedy, but the ongoing memory of Randi and Thea is a triumph of the human spirit. The community's refusal to forget their names and their kindness is a testament to the power of love. Tonight, we find peace in that testament, and in the knowledge that Randi and Thea are now held in a place of eternal gentleness. We look toward the morning with a renewed commitment to the sweetness they embodied, and we find comfort in the quiet of the night. Let the sound of the rain be your guide into a restful sleep, knowing that you are safe, and that the memory of these two sweet souls is preserved with love. The investigation is a search for facts, but memory is a search for the heart. In the heart of Warren County, Randi and Thea will always be remembered for the light they brought to the world. They were two sweet souls who made the world feel a little softer, a little kinder, and their legacy continues to live on in the hearts of those they touched. Tonight, as the Tennessee rain falls and the world settles into a quiet stillness, we find resolution in the memory of their lives. We know that they are at peace, and that their names will always be spoken with the love and respect they deserve. Sleep now, and let the rain carry you into the morning. Good night. Hello everyone, and welcome back. I know many of you enjoy listening to these stories as you fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love for you to let me know where in the world you are tuning in from tonight. Perhaps you are tucked away in a bustling city, or maybe you are watching the moonlight crest over a quiet field. Wherever you find yourself, let the rain outside your window become the backdrop for our journey. Tonight, we honor the memory of Randi Jean and young Thea, ensuring their names are spoken with the kindness they gave to the world. There is a specific rhythm to life in Middle Tennessee, a cadence that feels as ancient as the limestone beneath the soil. It is a place where the geography itself seems designed for reflection, characterized by rolling hills that rise and fall like a steady breath. In Warren County, the world feels smaller in the most comforting way possible. This is a landscape of deep greens and soft grays, where the Appalachian foothills begin to whisper their presence. It is a community built on the safe container of shared history, where the post office and the local grocery store are more than just buildings. They are the anchors of a quiet, small-town existence. In places like Warren County, the silence of the morning is usually a comfort, a reminder of the peace found in the heart of the South. As we visualize this setting, we must look specifically at a Sunday morning in early March. It is that fragile, transitional time of year when winter has not quite let go, but spring is beginning to stir in the roots of the dogwood trees. The air carries a damp, earthy scent, the smell of dormant fields waking up. On such a morning, the stillness is absolute. You might hear the distant lowing of cattle or the whistle of a train miles away, but otherwise, the world remains hushed. It is a time for slow coffee and soft conversations, a moment of collective rest before the week begins. This was the atmosphere of Warren County on March 8th, A day that began with the typical, gentle peace of the Tennessee countryside, unaware that the quiet was about to take on a much heavier meaning.